there, lovely folks of YouTube. Ren here. It is December now. I am outside. Here in Virginia, we get cold, but we don't get like awful cold. We're pretty mild climate. But it is getting cold, and I want to do something about these vegetable beds here. As you can see behind me are all my vegetable beds, and they are just a nasty, weed-laden mess. In years past, usually I would just leave it, just let the weeds do their thing. I might put some mulch on top of them, but otherwise I just leave the beds as they are and then just kind of till everything in the spring in order to, you know, sort of green compost in place. I'm doing things a little differently this year though. I'm trying out something new. I am going to plant a cover crop, and specifically the cover crop that I picked out that I'm going to plant is fava beans. I'm really excited about it. I've considered doing this in the past. I just didn't have access to fava beans, but I just happened to find them at the local nursery when I went to go buy my new fresh Christmas tree. So since I have fava beans, we're going to plant these out here, and we're going to let them overwinter as a green manure cover crop, and maybe even get some fava beans in the spring out of them. So we'll see. So my first step obviously is going to be to clear all this crap out of here, because everything here has got to go. I still have my tomato stakes in there. Haven't done anything with these beds since late summer, and all this needs to go. Look at this weed. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. So we're going to clear that out. I'm not going to film the entirety of that because it's going to be a couple hours worth of work, and I don't have the space on my camera for that, and I'm sure y'all don't have the patience for it either. But I at least wanted to show you the before, so that when everything is cleared out, you can see how much work I put into this, because it's going to be a lot of work. So anyway, come back in a little bit. Okay, so we're back. My bed has been tilled. All the weeds have been cleared out. All the old growth has been cleared out. I've taken my garden fork to it and turned over just the top few inches. There's still a few little weeds and bits in there, but they'll mostly be covered over by the time this hopefully works, so I'm not worried about them as much. I did want to talk a little bit about cover cropping and why I'm doing it. So ideally, in order to cover crop, what you're looking for is a crop that is cold hardy, because it's going to be sitting over the winter time during the coldest time of the year. You also want something that improves the soil in some way. So ideally, we usually do things that are in sort of the general legume family, beans, peas, things of that nature, because they form a symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizal bacteria that will help to fix nitrogen in the soil. All plants need nitrogen because it is the key component for making chlorophyll, which, as you should know, is the key component for photosynthesis, on which literally all life on Earth relies. So, nitrogen is not something that's very easy to get into a form that plants can use, however. It's usually pretty stable as a gas. Plants use it in a usually nitrate or nitrite form, where it's bound with other chemical components. I'm not going to bore you with all the chemistry. By the way, did I mention I was a chemistry major at one point in my life? But yeah, basically that nitrogen gas needs to be turned into a form that the plants can use before they can utilize it. And the mycorrhizal bacteria, which is really, I think, more of a fungus. They assist in that process, and they form a symbiotic relationship with plants in the legume family in order to do that, which is why they're really good for cover cropping, because basically they help to gather up some of that free nitrogen, turn it into a form that can be utilized by the plants, store it in the roots of the plant, and then when you cut that plant down and let the roots decompose, then that nitrogen stays in the soil for other plants to use. So that's basically what we're doing here with this cover crop. Now, the plant that I've chosen, the fava bean, Vicia fava. This is actually one of the oldest known cultivated plants in human history. We have been eating favas for a long time. Fava is, we call it a fava bean, but technically it's not really a bean. It's actually in the vetch family, which is in that general legume, umbrella, but not quite a bean or a pea or anything like that. So I do want to warn you that there is a medical condition out there. There are certain people who just genetically are born without the ability to create a enzyme that helps to digest fava proteins, and they get a condition called favism, which not only happens when you're eating or handling the beans, but also sometimes when you come in contact with the pollen from the flowers. So if you know you have that condition, I do not recommend planting fava beans. If you don't know that you have that condition, it happens most commonly in people of Middle Eastern and Mediterranean descent. If you've eaten fava beans in the past and you haven't had an issue, then you're probably fine. Most commonly it will cause flu-like symptoms or what we call hemorrhagic anemia, which is not cool. But I do want to warn you that there is that possibility, so take care if you don't know. Fava beans can be dangerous. So now, these little guys, as you can see, these are actually the smaller fava beans. So they're pretty bitty. Most fava beans are like big honkers. So this is a little one. This is called the Sweet Lorraine fava bean, and it's known for being really small. I have been soaking them in water for a few hours, just regular distilled water with no chlorine in it, just to help speed up some of the germination. And you can see, like, this little one right here has already started to crack that really thick seed coat that they have. So that one will probably germinate a lot faster. The plants get big. I would expect these plants to get about 4, maybe even 5 feet tall, with about a 1 foot spread. So we're going to plant them about 1 foot apart. And as you can see, I've got my soil. It's been just kind of gently loosened up a little bit just to make it easier for those plants to find purchase and germinate. And let me get just a handful of these. I'm going to plant these about 1 foot apart. This is a 4 foot by 8 foot bed. So multiply 4 by 8, you get about 32 plants per bed. And that's what we're going to be putting in there. Just poke them right in, about 1 to 2 inches deep, about 1 foot apart. Just like that. So, as you can imagine, this is another task that's going to take me some time to do. So I'm going to cut away again rather than, spare you the boring part. But we'll come back again once I have all these plants planted, and I might talk about, no, let me think. What do we have to talk about? Anyway, I'll just show you what I have at the end. So let's leave it at that. Okay, here we are. Beds are done. All the fava beans have been planted in this bed, the bed behind it, and then that third bed I threw in a few in there just for funsies because I had just a handful extra. I didn't actually prep that bed at all. There's actually still a few things growing out there, like my green onions, and I have some broccoli that's to go into seed and stuff like that. So if anything happens out there, that's fine. But as you can see, fava beans are planted about 1 to 2 inches deep. They should be hardy to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So that, as you can know, that's well below freezing. So as long as we don't go below 20 degrees during this winter, we'll be good. If we do have a night where we're scheduled to go below 20 degrees, I'm probably going to have to come out and put a blanket on these guys because plants do need to stay warm, and blankets help them stay warm just like they do for us. I have a little bit of mulch that I put on top. This mulch is literally just a mix of, it's what my daughter mowed out of the lawn recently. So it's grass clippings with some autumn leaves, fallen leaves mixed into it. It's only on there about 1 inch deep. You don't want grass clippings to be too thick because they will smother anything that's underneath it. I don't want them to smother these plants. I just want them to protect that soil and help to keep it warm as it decomposes. It will warm the soil a little bit, and that will help the seeds germinate as well. And also just to reduce any opportunistic weeds that might want to try and come in this new freshly tilled bed. This will help to cut down their numbers a little bit as well, give them less of a footing to purchase in. So yeah, as I mentioned before, these cover crops, hopefully they should add lots of nitrogen into my soil. They also help to reduce erosion risk. I usually don't have a problem with that. That's why I leave the beds looking like that over the winter normally. I want to keep all those plants there because their roots are hanging onto my soil and then they just get turned over in the spring. But hopefully these fava beans will do the same. But these will also give me the advantage of hopefully giving me something I can eat in the early spring. Fava beans themselves are edible, whether they're dried or fresh, or even when they're very young, you can eat the pods as well, just like you would green beans or snap peas. Supposedly you can eat the tops of these plants as well. The very tender, new growth tops can be eaten just like a lot of other leafy greens like kale and stuff like that. So I'm actually really excited. This is the first time I've grown fava beans. I cook with fava beans periodically. It's not something that normally is part of my diet, mainly because my husband, I usually use the dried fava beans because the fresh are very hard to find. But the dried fava beans, you have to process them. They have those, like I said, those really thick skins on the seeds that you have to kind of peel off of them. And to do that, you have to soak them for a certain amount of time. And they smell funky when they're first soaking. Once you get them all peeled and processed, they're delicious. But they do have kind of a funky smell to them. My husband, the first time I made fava bean soup, he was like, "Oh no, I'm not touching that. I smell what those things smelled like." And I'm like, "No, trust me, it's much better. It doesn't smell like that." So he's kind of warmed up to it, but it's not something I do often. It is something, however, I do for every Samhain, because the fava bean has a lot of history that ties into that time of year, particularly in people of, general Italian descent. Like, fava beans are really important during that time of year. And I like also kind of the symbolism of planting the fava bean at that time, and then having it grow into the spring. It's the fava bean is kind of a symbol of both life and death. Really interesting flower on it, very pure white with a single black splotch in it. It was said to be, the symbol of the marring of death on the beauty of life, and it's a really cool plant. So anyway, I'm excited to see how this turns out. This is as much of an adventure for me as it is for you, because I've never done this before. We're gonna keep an eye on this over the winter. So that's all I have for you for today. I hope this video finds you well. I hope the wind doesn't blow me out of the sound, because it is windy and cold. But anyway, I hope everything is well on your part, and I will see you again soon.